If I sound weird or off in this video, I'm coming over a bit of a cold, so I apologize in advance for that. This video has been overdue for a minute now, so let's continue where we left off. And now we arrive at what I consider the peak of the classic Sonic games, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. This game is very interesting as it's actually two games. See, originally Sonic 3 was going to be just one game, complete inbox with all the content, but of course, Sega got in the way again. And how did they manage to do that this time?
Where do the stars of Sega Sonic 3 go when the game's over?
Sonic? Are you guys in there?
Hey, here's a hint. They're at McDonald's in the $1.99 Sonic 3 Hamburger Happy Meal. Sonic launches with a push of a button.
Yeah,
Tails flies,
Sega had a McDonald's promotion, and the full Sonic 3 would not be ready before that deadline, and along with the ambitious scope of Sonic 3 to be bigger and better than Sonic 2, the team made the decision to split the game in half, releasing Sonic 3 in February of 1994, and the second half, Sonic and Knuckles, in October of the same year, all so that they could make the deadline for a McDonald's sponsorship. Yuji Naka and Yasuhara returned with SCI to work on these games, and the biggest hurdle they had was figuring out how to make these two games into one complete experience. See, despite splitting the games up, the team still wanted you to be able to play it as they intended, so they came up with the idea of lock-on technology, a feature that only the Genesis Sonic games would use. Essentially, the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge would open up revealing a port on the top where you could then put Sonic 3 on to complete the game, making it the original experience they intended it to be. Even if the team had the time, despite the McDonald's promotion, the game still would have been too big for a standard Genesis cartridge. After both games were released, they would consider releasing a limited edition version of the game in Japan. This version would have been shipped on a 24MB cartridge that would take the releases and consolidate them to be one cartridge as intended. This was later shelved as SCI probably wanted to move on to other things, and again the lock-on worked just fine. There isn't really a crazy story with Sonic 3's development. The most interesting tidbit to me personally that I found was initially they wanted to come at Nintendo Super FX chip that they were using to make 3D graphics on the SNES. Yuji Naka initially wanted to use this new upcoming processor Sega was making to create an isometric world for Sonic 3, similar to Sonic Labyrinth or more popularly Sonic 3D Blast, but Sega denied this idea because the processor wasn't even ready yet. I mean, shit, when it was finally ready, it was used in one game and that was Virtual Racing. I mean, this footage looks cool, but I'm not exactly itching to play this one. Sonic 3's goal after that was essentially to accomplish what Sonic 2 was going to be had they had time to see it through. That being said, this was a massive game, featuring a whopping 14 zones, most of them being bigger and longer than Sonic 2's. But let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about one of my favorite Sonic games in the whole franchise, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. My history with this one goes back over a decade at this point. I played Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles separately a lot when I was a kid, but always noticed the two games shared a lot in common. They had the same character sprites and overall felt very similar. Then one day I found out that the two games were supposed to be one game. You can play that version if you combine the two. I wouldn't touch this version until my mom's friend handed his hacked PSP to me and he had a version of it on there. But eventually when I was smart enough, I played it on an emulator on a tablet. I want to say this was during a time where there was barely any official ways to play Sonic 3 and Knuckles without tracking down the Genesis and both games or playing it on an Xbox 360, which I sadly didn't have anymore because mine red ringed. Playing it on a tablet would be my primary method of experiencing this game until I got a computer and would just play it on that. I absolutely love almost everything about this game, from the title screen all the way down to the new sprites everyone has. One thing I appreciate about the classic games that kind of give them their own unique look is the fact that every game in this era besides CD has Sonic and the rest of the cast rocking new sprite work each game. Sonic 3 having probably my favorite classic look for Sonic out of the original Genesis games. His pudgier yet still spiky design just clicks with me more than the other two looks. Not that they were bad, I love how Sonic looks in the other classic games, but alas, this one's on top for me. The lift also goes for Tails as well, love his new look too. The presentation has also seen an improvement. I already mentioned the title screen, but now there's a file select screen which lets you continue from any zone you last played, so you don't have to play the game all in one go. I like this UI and how everything's laid out. It fits into this game's aesthetics pretty well. You get up to 8 saves plus a no save slot, and you can pick between the different characters. It looks nice and also is accompanied by this really catchy song that gets me humming every time. Upon picking Sonic and Tails or Sonic alone, the game starts up with a cutscene showing the two arriving on a new mysterious island. This place popped up on Tails' radar he supposedly made between Sonic 2 and Now so he could track chaos signals, at least according to the Japanese manual. Upon seeing this signal, the two set out to explore it, and upon arrival they are immediately stopped by the only resident of the island, Knuckles the Echidna. He's the guardian of the Master Emerald, the MacGuffin that was more than likely what Tails sensed on his radar. Robotnik has tricked Knuckles to think Sonic is the enemy and that the Doctor is on his side, so Knuckles throughout different points in the game impedes on Sonic's progress, whether that be dumping him in numerous pits, turning off the power and card overnight, or just straight up blocking you in launch base. He's just here to get in your way, doing what he thinks is right. The first half is the Sonic 3 portion, which ends at this zone. Launch base is where Eggman is preparing to fall in Death Egg, and Sonic and Tails race to prevent it from taking off again. Ending in this thing falling from the sky once more, this time falling on a different part of the island, kickstarting the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game, where it can be visible in the Lava Reef Zone caves. After this, Sonic and Tails land on the surface below in Mushroom Hill Zone and trek further into Angel Island, eventually getting to the aforementioned Lava Reef Zone, where Robotnik manages to reactivate the Death Egg, kickstarting the climax of the game, where he causes a cave-in. Or something like that. I think the heat from the eyes turning on causes the surrounding area to actually get extremely hot, hence why the area looks the way it does. After that, you continue further on and come face to face with Knuckles in Hidden Palace Zone, where you duke it out with him. No traps or tricks, just a fair fight with Knuckles, where you embarrass the shit out of him. Once you become victorious in this fight, explosion starts going off, which upon investigation, you find Eggman stood in the Master Emerald, because of course he did. The trio tries to stop him, but to no avail, falling to the floor as it gives way. Knuckles, realizing Sonic and Tails aren't the enemy, decides to team up with them, and all three warp the Sky Sanctuary Zone, where Sonic and Tails do the dash to catch up to the Death Egg. Knuckles stays behind, as while he extends the bridge, he is too tired to continue with the duo. Their journey isn't a smooth one though, as a new variant of Metal Sonic tries to stop them, using inventions from the other two games. He later ditches this in the third encounter and chooses to face you himself. This is Mecha Sonic, a seemingly more advanced version of Metal Sonic from CD, but the more built frame is similar to Silver Sonic. He clearly has more intelligence too if he's able to operate Robotnik's machines, but nevertheless Sonic packs him up, and as the tower starts to fall, Sonic and Tails make a break for the Death Egg, jumping and landing safely on the flying lawsuit. After traversing through the final stretch of the game, you come face to face with a giant robot that gave me the shittiest time as a kid. This fight always had me tense because if you die, you spawn back with no rings, and after you destroy his fingers, you have to hit him once to open up his chest, and then again on the Master Emerald laser, which was tricky for me to dodge back then. Especially with Tails. He can easily screw you over during this fight if you're not careful, but thankfully it didn't happen to me here. Once you finally destroy this thing, Eggman makes an escape, still clutching the Master Emerald, and you have to keep hitting him until you finally put a stop to him. This is where the game reaches a crossroads. Yes sir, once again we're going to talk about special stages and Chaos Emeralds. Knuckles does take your emerald in the beginning of the game, and I'm guessing he throws them into all the big rings scattered across the island because that's where they're hidden. No longer are emeralds a thing you need 50 rings for to spawn a big ring to jump into at the end, nor do you need a checkpoint. Now you just need to find a big ring within the level you're playing, in which there are usually multiple in each act. When jumping into one, you're transported to a 3D looking space, officially welcoming you to the world of Blue Spear. Yep, the half pipe is gone, and now you have to touch all the blue spears and turn them into red ones so you can get your emeralds. I love Blue Spear. It's simple, kind of fun, but it can get a little tense because the longer you're in here, the faster your running speed gets, which makes it a requirement to have faster reaction times to turn Sonic where he needs to go. You can also get a continue if you collect enough rings, and get a perfect for getting all of them. Circling the perimeter of a group of blue spears turns them into rings, taking them off the board in the process. You should always do this, there's no real reason not to. Touching them all one by one will just make it more likely for you to touch a red spear and you'll lose out on rings. Red spears just boots you out of the special stage entirely and you have to find another big ring. These stages aren't nearly as difficult as Sonic 2's, but if you don't know the layout of them, then they can be confusing to navigate. Super Sonic and all his perks from the last game is the reward for getting the 7 Chaos Emeralds. However, here's where things get interesting. When you first touch down in Mushroom Hill Zone, you'll notice Knuckles looking suspicious and hiding something behind this door. If you have all the Chaos Emeralds upon going in, you'll be warped to the Master Emerald Shrine early, and the Chaos Emeralds will turn into bigger emeralds. You can then walk up and jump on any one of these and they will transport you to a new set of special stages. The reward for these being you returning the power to the bigger emerald, being revealed to be called a Super Emerald at the Shrine Altar. Once you get all of these, Sonic gets a new form, Hyper Sonic. This form is sick to me, but everything I like about it is probably the reason why it's never returned in the series. His flashing colors and the new ability he gets that allows him to do a dash that makes the screen flash white and kill every enemy on screen, while cool to me, probably gave kids a few seizures, so it never returned again. With this form in hand, Sonic is even faster than Super Sonic and can breathe underwater. Obviously he's still invincible as the form is above Super Sonic, but he can still die by crushing in Malice Pit, and the ring count is still consumed at a rate of 1 ring a second. Attaining either one of these transformations will allow you to enter the true final zone of the game, Doomsday Zone. After attempting to stop the fleeing Doctor, the space station explodes, leaving Sonic to transform and chase Robotnik through space as he's trying to make a break for it with the Master Emerald. In the beginning, you're supposed to fly into rings so you have enough to finish the boss. Hitting the asteroids slow you down and the missiles will knock you backwards, costing you time. And this boss fight is perfect. I love how tense it is, the memorable music, dashing through space as hypersonic, dodging the hazards. It's an amazing fight with great visual storytelling. And the opening few seconds of this zone just feels so perfect. The actual robot you're fighting is cool too. It's this ship-looking thing where you have to guide its missiles into its face, and once that's down, the Def Egg robot from the second game bursts forth in a last-ditch effort to steal the Master Emerald. You then ram your head into him to get the last few hits in and eventually snatch the Master Emerald from him. At any point during this, if your range reaches 0, you'll revert back to your base form and die, so there's an air of intensity during this fight. Needless to say, for me, this is the best final boss in all the Genesis games. The sense of scope the fight brings to the series is something we will continue to see in the games after this, so I thank this fight for being so ambitious for a Genesis title. Anyways, the day is saved, and Sonic and Tails return the Master Emerald back where it belongs, causing the island to float back up. The weight of the Def Egg after it crashed on the island and stayed there was the reason why the island was in the ocean to begin with when Sonic and Tails first got here, but the Master Emerald keeps it afloat, which is where it's naturally supposed to be. Just thought I'd clear that up, because Robotnik takes the Master Emerald near the end and relaunches the Def Egg at around the same time. Knuckles watches the duo take to the skies, appreciating what they've done for his home, and that concludes Sonic 3 and Knuckles. What a game, man. I know some prefer Sonic 2 over 3K, but I'm not one of them. This game took the series to a whole new level with its storytelling, introduced Knuckles into the franchise, and overall feels like the grandiose sequel they set out to make. And that's just going over the story stuff. These zones are really good. Angel Island is a dope opening level. I love the swings, logs, and traps everywhere, and how Act 1 has a cutscene in the middle showing this mini-boss blowing up Angel Island as Robotnik tries to burn Sonic and Tails alive in its forest. The whole level changes from this lighthearted, lush forest to this burning hellscape, showing that the Doctor is still just as much of a threat than ever. And yeah, I said mini-boss, as now every act has a boss fight instead of just Act 2. I like this, as every act now has a new challenge at the end to overcome, and whenever a new Sonic game, not just this game, has a boss to every act, I'm waiting to see what wild contraption or Robotnik I'm going to have to destroy. The first mini-boss is simple, but introduces the idea of stage transitions into the classic games. As stated earlier, a lot of them are Knuckles dumping you somewhere, but other ones are just Sonic and Tails continuing where they left off from a prior act, being launched by a geyser in Hydro City Zone, Tails flying into Carnival Night, getting shot out of a cannon and sent flying straight into Ice Cap Zone to then snowboard down the mountain are some of the many creative transitions present in the game. I also love both of the new additions this game brings to the series, that being character abilities and elemental shields. Starting with character abilities, hitting the jump button in the air with Sonic allows him to use the Insta Shield. Now at a glance, this ability doesn't seem all that special, but let me tell you, this move is awesome. Essentially, it forms a small shield around you for a split second that extends your hitbox by a lot. You can use it to hit normally hazardous enemies, bosses with strict hitboxes, or to quickly shield yourself from an incoming attack or hazard, allowing you to just kind of phase right through it. When playing as Tails, you can actually fly now, so it's not just an AI only thing. And the newcomer, Knuckles, can glide and climb walls with his fist. Everybody has their own special thing going on, and levels reward you for using their abilities to look for stuff. Although Knuckles is slower and can't jump as high when compared to Sonic and Tails, he makes up for it with his aforementioned abilities while also being able to break walls just by walking into them. The other addition, the Elemental Shields, are something only Sonic can use to its fullest extent. Even though the Insta Shield is a cool move, I'm guessing the devs wanted to give Sonic something they deem more substantial, so they came up with the Elemental Shields. Any character can get them and use their passive effects like the Bubble Shield letting you breathe underwater, Fire Shield protecting you from fire, and the Lightning Shield granting protection from electricity. But Sonic can use their other ability by pressing the jump button in the air. The Bubble Shield does this bounce move that's pretty cool for getting to a lower area quickly and getting to high places. The Fire Shield can do a dash attack that's great for getting an instant burst of speed to keep the flow going, and the Lightning Shield is my favorite as it gives you a double jump. It can also attract rings to your character, and when you grab this thing while you're in a super or hyper form, the game becomes even easier since the rings now attract you, allowing you to keep your powers active for longer. While only Sonic can use the Elemental Shield's extra ability, there is warrant to playing as other characters and exploring a bit. There are plenty of areas in every level that only Tails can get to with his flight, and Knuckles has a few areas exclusive to him due to the fact that he's strong enough to punch through tough objects, along with platforming challenges taking advantage of his abilities. In fact, Knuckles' playthrough takes place after Sonic's. In the background on Angel Island Zone, you can see that it's in the air as opposed to in the ocean. For some reason, this cutscene isn't in the original version of Sonic 3K, but in Sonic and Knuckles, an egg robot comes down and tries to blow up Knuckles, leading him to get pissed off and following it. The whole playthrough is Knuckles fighting this egg robot until in Sky Sanctuary where Mecha Sonic destroys him and you have to contend with a Super Mecha Sonic who transforms due to the power of the Master Emerald. Yeah, Sonic never technically destroyed Mecha Sonic, he just kinda malfunctioned, so his return here must be because he wants to settle the score after what he deems of a humiliating defeat. This is one of those boss fights where you remember struggling against it a ton as a kid, but when you refight it when you're older, it's really easy. Wasn't expecting to clear this as easy as I did, but hey, we take those. Knuckles also gets a super and hyper form where he glows pink. He doesn't really get any special abilities until Hyper Knuckles comes into the picture, in which he gets a screen nuke due to his glide causing what I'm gonna guess is an earthquake when you hit walls. It's pretty neat. Tails' playthrough is the same as Sonic's, except he doesn't fly through Doomsday Zone. The game ends at the Def Egg Zone. At least he gets a super form though, after collecting his super emeralds at least. Not sure why he can't use a super form with the normal emeralds, but I guess Tails is just that bad at using chaos emeralds. I mean, to give him credit, his super form is amazing. He can fly farther and faster, and he comes equipped with a fleeky army of oh god, I don't know what that was. He gets a group of flickies that automatically attack enemies. Checkpoints haven't changed too since they aren't for special stages anymore. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think depending on how many rings you have changes the stars around the checkpoint. A little bit of rings makes the white stars appear, and this minigame is a gumball machine filled with different items. The springs on the side disappear as you use them, but you can get the replenished gumball to bring the red springs back to the bottom. You're essentially spinning the gumball machine until you get the item you want. After that, if you pass a checkpoint you have a good amount of rings, then you get the orange stars. This is the slot machine. Works the same way it did in Casino Night Zone back in Sonic 2, although this time I had shitty luck here. The blocks on the bottom change color the more you spin on it, and eventually turns into a gold spear, sending you back to the level. Lastly, we have the red stars, which sends you to here. This is my favorite one. You use the electric balls and flippers to grab rings and touch the glowing orbs to see what item spawns from it, so you can grab it. This was my favorite one because it's more skilled involved in moving around. Only thing about it is that if you're here for rings, the lower you are in the tower, the less rings they'll give you. The orbs at the top give way more, so you kinda have to maneuver around to see if they spawn without accidentally shooting yourself out of the bonus stage. These bonus stages are just here so you can net you some bonus rings, items, and maybe a continue if you're in the slot machine one. I wouldn't say Sonic 3 is particularly difficult, more so tricky. There's some zones that I would say on a first playthrough you probably won't know what to do to progress, or it might take you some time to figure it out. I mean, need I mention the barrel in Casino Night, or this sand slide in Sandopolis? None of these things inherently will cost you a bunch of lives, just get you stuck for a bit. Unless you're playing as Knuckles, in which, damn, I forgot how much more of a challenge his run is. By the end of my Sonic and Tails run, I had above 20 lives, but come the end of Knuckles, and I had only 3, because I kept dying in his levels. More often than not, when I die in this game, it's due to crushing, but some of the bosses and enemies in Knuckles run just kicked my ass a bit. Like, I just had to play more cautiously, I guess. It was fun, and honestly a good change of pace from all the other classic Sonic games I've been playing. One thing I once again didn't spend much time with was multiplayer. Competition mode. It's there, and the zones from it are original to it, along with the music, but the screen crunch is once again weird, and the physics are totally different from the main game. It's off-putting. You know, besides that, I don't really have much in the way of negative things to say about Sonic 3K. I guess I don't really like how the Golem boss in Sandopolis takes a while to defeat because you have to wait and lure him over to the sand pit in order to dump him in. And Act 2 I used to not like, but after replaying it over the years, it's still fun. It's just Sandopolis isn't the most interesting zone in the game. Probably because it has you do the most waiting around for things to progress with these sand tubes that you have to wait inside of to get over stuff. Anytime I can skip the pushing block shit, I take it, but at least the Act 2 boss is sick. It's Robotnik controlling this robot pyramid golem thing, which, you know, now that I think about it, totally isn't foreshadowing for another thing we'll see later in this marathon. The music is definitely a highlight of Sandopolis. In fact, I love a lot of tracks in Sonic 3K, way more than Sonic 2. We all know the rumored Michael Jackson involvement in Sonic 3's soundtrack, but I'm not going to get into it here. The similarities to his work are there, but regardless of his involvement or not, God, Sonic 3 alone has an amazing soundtrack. Angel Island, Marble Garden, Hydro City, and Carnival Night are two of my favorite out of the zones. But something I hate is that locking the game onto Sonic and Knuckles changes the sound effects and boss themes to the ones in that game, and low-key, I hate it for one reason. The sound effects I can live with, but the mini-boss theme? Nothing will ever top running up to a boss in Sonic 3 alone and hearing that. It's so good. I love that Knuckles theme leitmotif that's in it. That rush of catchy notes followed by that come on! Like immediately, it gets me pumped to fight what's coming. But Sonic and Knuckles replace it with this. I just don't feel the same energy as before. That's my only blunder with the OST, because other than that, the Sonic and Knuckles tracks are great. Standouts being Mushroom Hill Act 2, Lava Reef Act 2, Sandopolis Act 2, and Doomsday Zone. Love the work put into this OST as a whole. Great listens all around. And that's it. That's all the main Genesis Sonic games covered on the channel. Obviously, on another day, I'll go over the spin-offs like Sonic 3D Blast, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Beam Machine, and Sonic Spinball, but not now. Also, it's become obvious that this won't wrap up before the end of September at this pace, so this marathon will end when it ends. I say that because I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on these upcoming games, and I wouldn't be surprised if those videos ended up being pretty long. That being said, I know it took me a while to get this video out, but I'll do my best to work on these new ones efficiently, though I might need a minute for a few of them. Anyways, I hope you all have a great day, and as always, peace. Holy shit, it's done.
yeah, I apologize for the wait on this one. I got caught up with work and was doing a whole bunch of hours and shit, and didn't have much time to work on this video, but I'm so happy to have gotten it good and together now. It is like almost 4 in the morning and I'm recording this, but if you made it this far, I want to say thank you, as always. And if you like this, consider subscribing, because I got more on the way and all that stuff. So yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and hope y'all enjoyed it on this, well, at least for me, it's Friday, so I hope y'all enjoy it. And yeah, goodbye. Also, if you couldn't tell, up next is Sonic Adventure, so yeah, stay tuned for that.